Good morning, guys. Yeah. So today we'll try to see two geology chapters, in which um, one is locomotion and movement. In that, what are the important aspects you need to cover? Right. This is again a vast lesson. Right. In this, the skeletal system, the last part of the lesson is kind of memory based. Right. Concepts are less, but the memory based questions may come from that. Like type of the bones we have, locations and their movements, types of joints and their movements. Where do you find? Those are the pretty much memory based questions. And what exactly you need to focus is, in this lesson, the prime focus should be at these muscles. When it comes to muscles, we have got three different types of muscles we talk about. One is striated, non-striated, and cardiac muscles. So you need to know these differences between cardiac muscle. Yeah, you can easily eliminate whilst you see the cardiac muscle functions in the options. But what if it is striated and non-striated? How do you really separate them, right? So this separation or this differences between striated and non-striated muscles are utmost important. Okay. So shape of the striated and non-striated, at the same time nucleate condition, whether multinucleate or uninucleate. In case of non-striated, you will find this single nucleus will be present in non-striated, but when it comes to striated, you will find multinucleated, right? And even the sarcolemma, striated muscles, you will be having sarcolemma as an bounded by sarcolemma. But in the case of non-striated, it is bounded by plasmalemma. And even in cardiac muscle also, you will be having the sarcolemma. Okay, so that's you need to understand. What makes this sarcolemma more advantageous or disadvantageous in striated and cardiac? Why non-striated doesn't have sarcolemma? What might be the difference? Is nothing but the voluntary and involuntary muscles. When you see that these non-striated muscles are mostly of involuntary in nature, right, compared to striated. That's what, if you remember the sarcolemma's functions, right? So directly I'm going to the muscle and muscle unit, right, and their membranes. So sarcolemma, where it allows this calcium ions to come in, and it will be having a neuromuscular junctions where the neuron synapses would be present very close to the sarcolemma. So this is how the impulses would travel, so that we'll get this movements, etc. So these are the important aspects that you need to focus in this lesson. So the first one, you have to start with the muscles, types of muscles and their functions. Okay, differences, right? So this is one area that you need to stop and you need to write. You need to focus. And myoglobin, hemoglobin, this why, what are the functions of this pigments? Also, you just focus. Right. When it comes to skeletal muscle, right, the skeletal muscle, the entire the structure cross section is important. Even in NEET test that I have conducted here in school, I have given this diagrammatic questions also. So there was a bundle sheet, there was a sarcolemma, there are blood capillaries, fascia. So they may ask you, they may give this diagram and they may ask you to find out, what is the important part, what is this part. So diagrammatic questions you can expect from this, skeletal muscle cross section. Okay. So muscle bundles and muscle fibers diagram right? No need to practice, you just look into the parts anatomy of it. While every time I used to tell, right? So when you have this anatomy, be it plant anatomy or animal anatomy, human anatomy, we'll approach those that lessons like this. Anatomy is like a map pointing, right? First we need to know its location, the area, and what are all the surrounding things. Just like when we want to go to Kanan, Kannan or Ratinam, we have to know its their location. Once we reach that location, then we will really look into what we want. It means functions. In the similar lines, anatomy is something which we talk about map pointing. It means what is the location, what is the texture, physical aspects, and how many layers, what are the associated tissues and the cells. When you know the location perfect and the components present in this system or organ, remaining functions you can really build upon that. If you don't know the location, it's very highly unlikely that you can really recollect the function of it. Okay, so please, when we learn this human anatomy at the same time plant anatomy, know the locations, tissues, etc., so that you will not find any difficulty in recollecting the functions, right? And at the same time, structure of myofibril also important. So the A band, the sarcomere that it contains, the sarcomere unit of this muscle, that sarcomere, when it is contracted, what are the different bands got vanished or bands got constricted, and while it is relaxed, what are the bands that actually increased in their length. So where exactly M line is there, where are the Z lines, where is the I band. So all these bands and the locations, diagram is important. So they may give the sarcomere diagram and they may ask you to point which part is what. So they may give the constricted the sarcomere. Whoever metric students are there, I hope this lesson was covered in your +1. So we are actually talking about this locomotion and movement, right? So in this lesson we will be talking about the muscle and its components. I hope you guys covered this. So you guys are aware. So if you are not aware of this, please let me know. Okay. So when we talk about this sarcomere, the units, right? Those diagrammatic questions you may expect, right? So once you are very well with the sarcomere, then we will come to the. So in this sarcomere, the I band, light band, and isotropic, anisotropic bands, H zone, M line. So H zone will be like this, and within the H zone you will be finding M line. So at the same time, Z lines and isotropic and anisotropic, and you have myosin and actin filaments which slide over each other. So that makes it contracted and relaxed muscle. Contracted, relaxed muscle. So this is how the muscle would move. Okay, it increases its length. So while it is moving like this, you can see that the gap here is actually vanished, right? So those are the things you need to focus. Where this is a point where we go wrong actually. So another diagram is which is more important is the myosin and actin fibers. So myosin, its head components, right? Heavy myom, we have got HMMR, heavy myromyosin and light myromyosins. And the tail part, head part, what are the ATP binding sites? That is this small diagram of myosin. At the same time, actin filaments. So actin filaments are wounded like this, and they will be having what is it? If you consider this as an tropomyosin, so they will have tropomyosins like this. So 1, 2, 3 like this. So this filaments are actually wounded together. So this actin filaments, that is tropomyosin, afactin, and troponin, how they are present and where they bind to the myosin is where you need to focus. Okay, these are the important diagrams. Especially the mechanism of muscle contraction is very important. At the same time, the ATP activation, right? During muscle contraction, what happens? So they may give this diagram, actin and myosin filaments. So if you consider this is an what do you say, actin filament, and this is myosin, so it will attach like this. So for to attach to this actin to from the by the myosin, you need some ATP. So this ATP is utilized here. So again, it will lose. So this is how this attachment would takes place. So this entire cycle is very important, and where exactly ATP is utilized, where exactly ATP, how many times the ATP utilized, and where exactly this cross bridges are forming. This is what cross bridging. So where exactly the cross bridging forming, and who is helping to form the cross bridging. At the same time, role of calcium ions also, calcium ions and magnesium ions in this activation of this myosin and actin filaments or binding is important. So once go through that, right? So these are the highlights that you have to cover in muscular system within this lesson: locomotion and movement. So you have to know the difference between what is locomotion, what is movement, and whether we are which organisms does locomote and which move. Right, there is a subtle difference between them, and there you can get the correct or incorrect statements regarding the definitions of locomotion and movement. So you shouldn't be ignoring those definitions, right? So for example, locomotion in unicellular organisms, how the unicellular organisms, and sometimes there would be some sudden statements as well. So whether all locomotions are a movement or all movements are locomotions. So these type of statements may confuse you. So please try to read, and I've already given links to download this ebooks. I mean the PDF of CBSE, NCERT textbooks also, for especially for metric students are concerned. You may not having this book, so I made that links available in website. Okay. So exactly, smaller invertebrate, lower invertebrates like Hydra can use its tentacles for capturing its prey, and also used for the locomotion. So you need to understand these examples between the movement and the locomotions. Okay. So types of muscles I already told, and the diagrams that were given in NCERT, that is muscle cross section, diagram representation. At the same time, sarcomere, contraction and relaxation of sarcomere. At the same time, this actin and myosin filaments, their parts and the mechanism of muscle contraction, especially this myosin and actin binding through ATP, cross bridge formation, when the cross bridges would broke and when the cross bridges would form, and what makes this this H zone disappear during the contraction, and when during the relaxation, what happens to the H zone and I zone and A zones. These are the important aspects that you can cover in, and you may get confused, and you may lose marks. So you should concentrate on these terms, right? Especially these concepts. So this is muscle contraction is more of a conceptual form, and when it comes to skeletal system, it is pretty much all of memory based. So what are the facial bones and occipital, condyle, temporal bone, and what are all those functions? Whether they are fused or they are attached to cartilaginous tissue, or what type of bones they have. Is that what type of bones it is made up of, different parts, right? So that you need to focus. At the same time, the ear ossicles, right? Tiny bones which are present, incus malleus stapes. If you guys remember, did you remember the structure of ears? Within the ear, inner ear, you find this three bones which actually articulate together to really. That's what It enhances the sound, right, at the tympanic membrane, and these are the ear ossicles, and these are the ear bones, which are the tiniest bones that you can see in your body. Stapes, right? So incus malleus stapes. So these bones are you need to remember. Okay. Yeah. So, and then coming to the sternum, and it's either whether it is placed dorsal side or ventral side. At the same time, how many ribs you have, right? So this is ventral side, and the back side is dorsal, right? So ventral side, how they are actually placed. I mean, the ribs are actually attached to the sternum, and what are the number of ribs that are attached to the sternum, and which are floating ribs, which are non-floating ribs, and which are true ribs, true ribs and false ribs. Their numbers are important when it comes to this rib cage. Okay, reminding you, these are all 6th and 8th standard kind of concepts or stuff, right? So bones, type of bones and their functions, and those are all 6th and 7th standard knowledge, so you can pretty much recollect by yourself. And we talk about appendicular skeleton, and we have got pectoral and pelvic girdles. So this is pectoral, and this is pelvic girdle, and their parts and their functions and their locations also important. So what are the number of bones that are present in this hand? You can see carpals. You can have carpals, metacarpals, phalanges. So these are the different types of bones you can find in hand, and what are those numbers, etc. are important. So which is the strongest bone, which is the smallest bone, which is the weakest, in the sense like what do you say? Uh, for example, patella is there. Patella, how this patella would actually cover a kneecap, acts as a kneecap, but it eventually with the age it actually degrades. So how those things are important. So here patella, at the same time femur are important. Femur is where our entire body weight is falling on it, which will be the strongest bone, right? And the joints, when it comes to joints, we have different joints, and you can see this like a door we open in only one side. So this is one hinge joint would be the important. And you have got synovial joints, cartilaginous joints, and fibrous joints. Within that, there are different types of movements you can find, right? So we have, especially the ball and socket joint is important, and where exactly you'll find the ball and socket joint. So you have ball, this is socket like, and this is ball. So it would rotate, it can rotate, right? So this free movements of this hand is because of the ball and socket joint. And pivot joint, you can see that the head is placed in the axis, right? Atlassian axis, and there is a gliding joint, so it glides like this, right? The gliding joints present in the carpals. So like that, what are the different types of joints and their functions and their locations that you need to focus. And the synovial fluid and synovial joint and synovial fluid functions that you need to once touch upon. Okay. Finally comes to the disorders of the muscles and skeletal system. That what are the disorder, where is the location, what exactly happening, and what is the condition, symptoms. Osteoporosis, if you see, age related, characterized by decrease in the bone mass. So increase in the chance of fracture. So we can call it as brittle bone also. So they become brittle, that even if you touch like this, even if you tap your hands like this also, the bones would break. So even accumulation of uric acid crystals at the joints, you can call that as a gout, right? So these are the different different examples of the disorders you need to cover. In all the anatomy lessons, disorders and their symptoms are utmost important. You shouldn't be ignoring that. So with this, we will complete this lesson. These are the highlights that you can follow in this lesson. Hope you really I'm making sense what actually I'm trying to communicate. I'm trying to communicate what are the highlights that you need to stop and you need to focus. Okay. I'm again telling I'm not explaining the each and every concept. I'll be explaining only on your request. If you have any doubts or if you have anything, so this topic needs to be taken, please put it in group. It's up to you, or you can type here itself. Okay, so I will take that topic. Okay, so I have to plan accordingly. That's what. Right. So this is the first lesson in 19th. Uh, uh, sorry, 20th lesson, and now we'll start with the neural coordination. Is very favorite lesson for you guys, if I'm not wrong. Right, it's very easy to understand, but at the same time very important lesson. Right, so neural coordination is concerned here different types of system. Within the neural system you have CNS and peripheral nervous system, and within the peripheral nervous system you have got uh, sensory division and motor division. And there is other type we got autonomous nervous system, where we got parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So each type of nervous system and their location where they present and what they comprise. If you see the CNS, they comprise brain and spinal cord, right? So if you see the peripheral nervous system, they within the peripheral nervous system there are sensory division is there, motor division is there. Sensory division, again, it conveys, there would be involvement of certain receptors which conveys the message to CNS, sensory, that's what. And then there is a motor where the muscles and glands would be involved in this motor division of the peripheral nervous system. And there is other nervous system, that is autonomic nervous system, where most of smooth muscles involuntary actions will be taking place here, where parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system will be present. So this demarcation, or this what do you say, this classification you should get into your mind, otherwise you will confuse like anything. So what I can do is uh, I'll try to give sort of what do you say, uh, picture of this. Just a minute. Yeah. Good. Okay. 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 Sorry guys. So where we are? Yeah. So coming to this neural coordination, right? We have these are the parts. I mean, these are the classifications that you need to get. So I'll be sending this in group so that you can have it with you. Because this is not clearly mentioned in your NCERT. That's why I'm mentioning here. I'm sending to our class group. Okay. So just follow that. Why I'm sending is that this is not given properly in your NCERT. That's why. Okay. So I sent. Just check it. Right. So let's move on. So these are the different systems that you need to focus, right? And within the central nervous system, right, we have brain, and their meninges are important. Like you have dura mater, arachnoid membrane, and you have got pia mater or pia mater. So these three layers of this meninges. These meninges are important, right? So these are the different three different meninges that are given in NCERT. But in NEET book, you may find three more, right? Epidural or subdural or subarachnoid membranes or space. So you just see their meninges and their location and their functions. That's it. Okay. So coming to the parts of the brain. So each brain, right? Forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, and the temporal lobes, right? So what are those associated organs and associated locations and their functions? So this is how you need to really focus on. So this is the framework of the lesson. So you will be getting a cross section of the brain, right? So you'll be having each location, and it is associated with some other tissue. It is some tissue in the sense like where exactly they're present, whether it is in temporal lobe or occipital or olfactory lobes, right, in the frontal cortex. So where exactly the location and what are those functions that you need to really focus. Okay. So entire, if you take all these parts, right, midbrain, forebrain, midbrain, hindbrain, this is how you need to approach. This is sometimes something like a map pointing, brain pointing, map pointing only. So within this area, you imagine that the brain. Don't imagine just like a brain. Imagine that is a gobi, and put each whoever you wanted to make this more interesting learning. So you can make this as a map, and you point out frontal lobe. These are the retinum stores and other things which are available. So these are the functions. You can assign something for them so that you can easily recollect during your examination. This is how you can build your own mnemonics, right? So each area and their functions, motor functions or sensory functions, especially within this nervous system, the limbic system is utmost important. So limbic system during our final exam of 11th standard also, I gave one of the question where there was an accident for the Vamsy Krishna, right? Vamsy Krishna met with an accident, and there was a problem with the limbic system, and what happened further. Like I gave some case study also. So when it comes to this, the limbic system is important. So limbic system, what are the associated parts in the limbic system that you need to focus? So before even going to the entire brain aspects, right? These are the things that you need to focus, especially what do you say? Neuron diagram and their parts and their functions, synaptic knob and synapses, types of synapses, chemical synapses, electrical synapses, neurotransmitters. We have neurotransmitters, different types of neurotransmitters and their functions, etc. that you need to focus. So especially this conduction of nerve impulse, they may ask you, location, polarization, depolarization, and action potentials, and how this impulse would travel, right? So this impulse travel, conduction of nerve impulse through axon would be a little confusing, but if you have any doubts, you can ask me at any point of time. So what are the potassium, sodium potassium channels, or when they are opening and from site A to B. So here you need to focus on the underlying concept that how these ions are maintaining outside the axial lemma and inside the axial lemma, that makes it polarized and depolarized, and hyperpolarization would takes place, and how this nerve impulse would takes place. Okay, so you may expect graphs related to this impulses also. Okay, so that you need to, especially this conduction of nerve impulse, you need to focus more. So within this brain limbic system, you have to focus on limbic system. amygdala and their functions. And then reflex action again, it's a ninth grade, ninth and eighth grade, concepts. So what are the nerves, different types of nerves involved in this pathways, efferent pathway, motor neurons, and you have got you have got interneurons and their functions. And here reflex action, you need to know the flowchart. So when suddenly there is a stimulus, so from stimulus to how this impulse is traveling, not directly to the CNS, but within the spinal cord, right? So that flow chart that you need to remember. Okay. So when it comes to sensory organs, each diagram you need to focus, and importantly, eye. When it comes to eye, the functions of rods and cones, right? And associated ciliary muscles of making this iris, and you can see this the diameter is increasing and decreasing. What makes this increase and decrease, right? So the functions of iris, each part of the eye and their functions are important, because they may ask the column A, column B questions or correct or incorrect statements. Especially functions of rods and cones are important. So what exactly the blind spot, why it is called blind spot? And these are all direct questions you may not expect, but the mechanism of vision has more conceptual basis. So how this opsin and retinol would actually change their conformation to to get actually a vision, right? So mechanism of vision, this opsin and retinol functions in the visual cortex, and the visual cortex functions nothing but they actually receive this transmitted impulses, and they form an image in the visual cortex. So here in the mechanism of vision, we need to more focus on opsin and retinal. Okay, so here I already mentioned about here in the last lesson that this bones and their location, and especially if you take the cross section of this cochlea, so this cochlea structure, and where exactly this enhancement of sound is taking place. So this on the tectorial membrane, you will find this movement of the ciliary movement, and those movements would actually goes to the hearing centers. So this is organ of corti, and the tectorial membrane would be the more important that you need to focus in this structure of the ear, right? Pinna, axonal pinna, and then canal, tympanum. These are all in the lower standards itself you knew, but when it comes to organ of corti, at the same time basilar membrane, and the same time tectorial membrane, their locations and their functions are more important when it comes to the hearing. Okay, and obviously just go through once mechanism of hearing. So how these vibrations are actually transmitted into the impulse, right? So within this organs, you need to focus on the rods and cones functions, and blind spot, and mechanism of vision, at the same time mechanism of hearing, and cochlea and organ of corti, and tectorial membrane, ciliary movements. So these are the important areas you need to focus. So more than this, nothing you can have it in this lesson according to NCERT. But when you see in NEET book, you will be finding that there are spinal nerves, and these nerves and their associated functions also will be there. So there would be a number of this spinal nerves, how they are actually meeting the different organs and their functions would be an extra effort you need to keep. So these are the number of the, what is the number of optic nerves, right? Optic nerves and spinal nerves, right? Cranial nerves and their functions. Those were given in the NEET book. Just you have to brush up. Okay. So more than this, these are the things you need to cover in this lesson. Okay. So I hope this session is useful, where I have just highlighted what are the things that you need to actually focus on. Okay. So if you really want me to explain anything, you can ask me right now, or you can post it in the group. So we need one more class on certain topic. I'm ready to take. Okay. Yeah. So that is it for today, guys, and we'll meet you in the next session. And if you have any doubts, please do ask. And thank you for interacting here. Right? Yeah. Thank you. Stay home and stay safe. Please don't ignore the diagrammatic questions in these lessons, anatomy lessons. Okay. Thank you.